Hello guys, welcome to my new video, and today I'll be talking about BfA patch 8.25 and basically looking at Mistweaver Monks and whether you should play them or not. This is going to be a overview video concerning Mistweaver Monk healing, concerning the changes they went through, concerning maybe the lack of changes that they went through. I will be talking about the improvements at the end of the video. The video will start with basically a data and number review. So I'll be looking at how Mistweavers perform in Mythic, how Mistweavers perform in Heroic, what are the numbers in terms of Mythic Plus, what are the most popular essences, and then I'll go into the gameplay and basically an overview of the gameplay. So if you want to just look at the gameplay overview, you can skip ahead. But first of all, let's look at Mistweaver performance in the latest patch of BfA 8.2. This is the Heroic overview of Eternal Palace. Now, the Heroic overview, if you're not looking to go into Mythic, Mistweaver Monks are performing extremely well. Mistweaver Monks, to some extent, I've ranked them as one of the easier healing classes to play out of the 6 healing specs, 5 healing classes. Mistweavers are doing really well because they are somewhat of a reactive healer. So if the damage comes out, they just heal. And you can see they're actually doing really well in Eternal Palace in Heroic difficulty. If you look at the parses in terms of what is the most popular healing spec, you'll see that Mistweavers are actually doing pretty okay. There's a lot of druids in there, but Mistweavers are doing pretty good. There's 65,000 parses for Heroic Eternal Palace. Mistweavers are doing pretty well in terms of the overall healing. This is the 75 percentile. So if you're looking for Heroic Eternal Palace, Mistweaver is a really good reactive healer, and it's gonna do you really well. Now, the problems start to appear if you're looking to progress your Mistweaver Monk beyond the Heroic. So if you go to Mythic version, you'll see that okay, they kind of dip down. Holy Paladin Glimmer build is extremely strong. Discipline Priest is undervalued in terms of performance. Here they're considered to be a lot better than they're shown on the meters, because meters are not always important in Mythic progression, because DPS of healers is really strong. So it's kind of sad for me to compare. Every time I talk about any other healers in these videos, I always have to compare them to the top healers in Mythic Eternal Palace progression, which is Holy Paladin and Discipline Priest, and their DPS and their healing output and damage reduction cooldowns are just far too strong to compare to anybody else, to be honest. So Mistweavers, if you're looking for really high-end Mythic progression like World Top 100, maybe World Top 200, Mistweavers are definitely going to be somewhat on the lower scale, and I'll talk about that later on. You can actually see this in the number of passes. If you go to the most popular healing specs in Mythic, you see Holy Paladin is there, and you see Mistweaver as the lowest represented healer in Mythic progression, and their numbers dip down even lower when you go to the harder bosses like Zakul, Ashara, and things like that. So Mistweaver is definitely the underdog in Mythic Eternal Palace. If we actually go and check out some of the healing breakdown, and I picked out a random log just to see what healing breakdown is going to be for Mistweavers in a lot of these raids, and you can see that Essence Font is going to be a big part of your healing rotation, is going to be a big part of your healer breakdown or throughput. You can see the Mastery is still there, Vivify Revivals and things like that, and we'll talk about some of the essences that a lot of the Mistweavers are picking when going into raiding. So if we go to the essences that are very popular for Eternal Palace, again, I'm looking at the highest performing Mistweavers, and this is really, disclaimer, it's not always the best to look at this. Like, a lot of the times the top parsing Mistweavers will be doing something cheesy that's not really viable or not really applicable to a lot of other healers. So this is the Heroic, or this is actually the Mythic bosses. So you can see that for a lot of the bosses like Sevara, where the kill timer is even below 3 minutes, a lot of the Mistweavers are going with Light Binders Invocation. A lot of Mistweavers are going with ERT Minor for basically for the intellect proc, basically for the mana that you get from it as well. Some Mistweavers are going with Conflict and Strife Minor and Major, depending on the fight. Again, Conflict and Strife Minor is actually really good for all of the healers, or majority of the healers. So you kind of forced to do PvP, even if you're a PvE player. But if you go to Radiance of Ashara, we start seeing Way of the Crane or Conflict of the Strife Essence that gives you Way of the Crane ability, because Radiance of Ashara is really bursty fight, and Way of the Crane is actually really fun to use in this fight. But you start noticing again, Light Binders Invocation on these shorter fights, you notice Memory of Lucid Dreams. So the biggest issue that happens with Mistweavers in Eternal Palace and in raiding in Mythic Plus is mana conservation, especially for someone who's a new Mistweaver. They struggle a lot with it. So you start seeing the Essence approach in Orgonzoa, which is an extremely high HPS fight. I feel Orgonzoa is an indication of what AoE healers are capable of, because it is not uncommon to break 80, 100k HPS on this mythic fight, and you start seeing Mistweavers specking into the Mana Essence build, and that is the Memory of Lucid Dream Major and ERT Minor. Both of these essences provide you with a ton of mana back throughout the fight, and I feel that is probably your progression essence build if you're unsure whether you're going to need mana or not. Again, there are still people who are going with Light Binders Invocation to a certain extent, but I feel the mana essence or the mana build is very popular. You can see a lot of the raiding Mistweavers are going with Font of Life essence, which is very good in raiding environments as well. So you start to notice a different approach to Mistweavers that are progressing and Mistweavers that are basically doing farm content, and that is between mana essences and throughput essences. So if we go to a Mythic Plus representation, and right now I'm looking at unique class population in terms of level 15 and up, and again, no surprise here, Resto Druid has been a king of Mythic Plus basically throughout the whole BfA. So you're not really gonna beat a Resto Druid in terms of popularity in Mythic Plus, but you can start to see that Mistweavers are not really, you know, being pushed back or something like that. They're doing pretty well in terms of representation in Mythic Plus. Paladins are kind of become a bit more popular basically because of the Glimmer build, but I feel that if you go to 20 and up, you still have somewhat of representation for Mistweaver Monks, especially because if you were watching some of the MDI polls, you'll notice that Way of the Crane is extremely fun to use. It is an essence, arguably one of the best essences that any healer received, to be honest, in terms of throughput, because if you use Way of the Crane in Mythic Plus, and if your group or your MDI group pulls like 20 mobs, it scales up. The more mobs you have to hit, the more healing you're going to do. And at the end of the run, your Way of the Crane is probably going to be your top heal. There is very few healers that received essences that could account or be your top healing ability in Mythic Plus or raiding. So technically Way of the Crane, if optimized, is one of the best essences for a healer. But again, if you're just pugging Mythic Plus content, if you're not sure how the pug is going to pull, if the pug is only pulling like one trash pack at a time, Way of the Crane is probably going to end up being more of a mana issue than actual healing throughput. So there is a downside between disorganized groups and organized groups. So this is my Mistweaver Monk right now that I haven't really played as much as I wanted to. So I just wanted to talk about some of the differences in terms of Azeroth traits when coming into Mythic Plus or raiding. So I've seen a lot of people, or at least Secret Infusion has been becoming really popular, and it's been really strong for the last couple of patches, and there is a couple of ways to really enhance your weaknesses as a Mistweaver Monk, and that is basically cooldowns. Revival to some extent can be a great, oh crap, I didn't expect this damage to happen, I'm gonna press Revival. But at the same time, when compared to other healing cooldowns, Revival is relatively, you know, it's mediocre. It's not gonna really be like, oh, we need a Mistweaver just for Revival. But with Secret Infusion, after using Thunder Focus Tea, your next spell gives you a certain amount of stat for the next 10 seconds. So if you use Rising Kick after Thunder Focus Tea, you'll get versatility. If you use Enveloping Mist, you'll get Critical Strike. And a lot of the times Mistweavers will do a certain, let's call it optimization. So they use Thunder Focus Tea and they either go into Soothing Mist into Enveloping Mist, or they either use Rising Sun Kick. So let's say I go Soothing Mist into Enveloping Mist. Now I'm going to get Critical Strike because of the Secret Infusion, and then I can use Revival. Now my Revival is going to have a higher chance of critting. A lot of people will use this to empower their Revival, because Revival, again, especially in Mythic Plus content, is used more as a way to dispel things rather than to heal up. So overall, if you're looking to play a Mistweaver Monk and you're wondering what kind of playstyle there is, in Mythic Plus, the playstyle, again, it's gonna depend whether you use Way of the Crane or not. If you're going to end up using Way of the Crane, a lot of the times it's gonna change your stat priority. You probably stay away from Mastery a bit more, and you might have to have different gear sets for it. At the same time, Way of the Crane costs a ton of mana, 25,000 mana, and a lot of people If they're using Way the Crane, they will go with Mana Tea, so they'll pop Mana Tea and then they'll pop Way the Crane, meaning that's gonna save a ton of mana. So basically, because Way the Crane is only 1 minute cooldown, but Mana Tea is 1.5, to some extent you can say that Mana Tea's cooldown is going to incur that cooldown onto Way the Crane. Because you most likely will not want to use Way the Crane outside of Mana Tea, unless you have something like a Balanced Druid who gives you innervates and things like that. So I guess Mistweaver becomes like a prime candidate for innervates if they're running Way the Crane in raiding situations, in Mythic Plus as well. So if you have a Balanced Druid friend, ask them for innervate, it's gonna help out with Way the Crane. But again, we saw the analysis. Way the Crane is not crazy popular in raiding situations. In Mythic Plus, it is very fun to use. I've used it for quite a lot, but at the same time, it needs a group that's gonna utilize it and pull a ton of mobs, because Way the Crane is gonna scale up. The more mobs you have, the more mobs you can hit, the more healing you're going to do. So again, the type of healing that Mistweaver will have in raid situations, again, it is not a cooldown dependent healer. It has Revival, which is extremely easy to use. Revival does not require a lot of setup unless you're using Secret and Infusion Azeroth trait, and then you use Thunder Focus Tea into, like, you know, Enveloping Mist and then Revival. So you have to kind of prepare a couple of global cooldowns before Revival. But if you're not doing that, Revival is very easy to use, arguably the easiest healing cooldown to use, and it's gonna snipe a lot of healers if you're not careful. In terms of cooldowns that you have to use, Mistweaver is a type of healer that's gonna do a good or really high amount of healing constantly. As long as they have their Essence Font, or they utilize the Essence Font with Upwelling, there's gonna be a whole lot of healing. It's gonna leave a hot on people, and if you heal with any of your healing abilities with the people with the hot, it's gonna double proc your mastery. It's gonna be a double proc of mastery, which means that it's basically free healing to some extent. So there's a lot of Mistweavers that utilize Essence Font. Essence Font is your bread and butter. It's an extremely fun talent to use. It's relatively easy to use because it is a smart heal. Your Renewing Mist is a smart heal. It's a hot that you place on targets. It's going to jump down when the target reaches 100%. A lot of the Mistweaver heals are smart heals. This is why I say that Mistweaver is a very good beginner's healer. At the same time, it's very good for a beginner, but it's also one of the biggest issues for new players is their mana consumption. But I feel with the new essences that are coming out with Memory of Lucid Dream, you have ERT Biner, these essences will allow you to get a lot of mana back, and it'll kind of, you know, all of a sudden, I'm not having any more mana issues. I can use my Mistweaver the way that I always wanted to. I don't have to be that careful. So again, with certain essences, Mistweaver becomes a very, very good beginner's healer. Again, people who are looking to master Mistweaver, I feel that if you're not playing Way the Crane, there is going to be a lack of depth in terms of healing rotation. And I know I might get flamed or people might disagree with this, but I feel if you're playing a Mistweaver for a really, really long time, you're not looking to play Way the Crane. With Way the Crane, all of a sudden there's going to be a different rotation in terms of DPS that you need to pay attention. If you're not playing Way the Crane, you're basically doing the same thing over and over, and you're trying to optimize your, you know, Essence Font and trying to heal the people who have your Essence Font hot on them. And I guess on certain boss fights, you'll go with Refreshing Jadewind. Orgonzoa is a very good example of this. Again, mana might be an issue, but if you have the essences, mana might not be an issue anymore. And I feel this is where I'm gonna go in terms of talking about Blizzard and how they missed a huge opportunity with Mistweavers. And I feel really, really sad. I'm gonna call out Blizzard on this. And I felt that at the very start of BfA, I was playing the beta, and Rising Mist was actually an extremely strong talent at the start of the beta. So Rising Sun Kick heals all allies with your Renewing Mist, Enveloping Mist, or Essence Font Hot, and extends the effect by 2 seconds. And all of a sudden, I was like, okay, Mistweavers are going to go into this pure fist-weaving build where you're going to be, you know, staying beside the boss, hitting the boss. Maybe Spirit of the Crane is going to become really good. Spirit of the Crane was actually a viable talent in Uldir. A lot of people use Spirit of the Crane in Uldir, and it was very, very strong, or at least it gave you a lot of mana back, or at least it was more viable. This might be interesting to play. Mistweaver might have different playstyles, but Rising Mist got nerfed in the beta. And all of a sudden then in Uldir, which I mained Mistweaver in Uldir, I mained Mistweaver in BOD. In Uldir you still had this strong niche of, hey, I'm the best single target healer in the game. Soothing Mist, Enveloping Mist, Vivify combo will get you topped up, no issues. There's no other healer who can really top up someone from 10% to full as fast as a Mistweaver. We have a niche. Mistweavers in old year, especially certain bosses, had insanely high tank damage, and Mistweavers became, like, you know, a popular healer. To some extent, Holy Paladins did not have Glimmer of Light, and maybe that also made Mistweavers more popular. And then all of a sudden in BOD Mistweavers were still quite strong, were still quite fun, but their niche was somewhat disappearing. Holy Paladin with Glimmer started appearing. Glimmer is becoming a really strong thing. And if you're not playing Holy Paladin, Holy Paladin will basically use their Crusader Strikes, which is a melee ability, to reset their Holy Shock, which is their best healing ability, which is also going to leave Glimmer. So all of a sudden, Holy Paladins became these melee healers, and they were doing a ton of damage, a ton of healing, and they had damage reduction. And I was just constantly thinking, this is what Mistweavers should have become. Mistweavers were heading this way from the very start of BfA. They had this Rising Mist talent, they had Spirited Crane, which gives you mana back when you're doing damage. You had this DPS rotation, and Blizzard just never buffed Rising Mist. All of a sudden, maybe people would have different playstyles. They might be like, okay, this boss, I can go Rising Mist, I can do DPS, I can, you know, extend my HOTS, I can use my Rising Sun Kick. Way the Crane came out, which is I was extremely happy about, but it never really made it into the raiding scene. It made it into the Mythic Plus scene, but I'm always and forever will be regretful of what could have been with Rising Mist. But if you're looking to play Mistweaver right now, especially as a new beginner healer in World of Warcraft BfA, I feel there is no better healer than Mistweaver. I honestly feel Mistweaver is one of the best starting healers that's going to give you really good numbers with relatively little effort. And again, this might seem a little bit harsh to say, but there is a lot of the healing abilities that Mistweaver has that are smart, that are done for you, that are handled by you. And if you're having mana issues, you can just spec into the mana essences. If you're looking to progress mythic high-end raiding content where you need to push DPS, you need to have damage reduction cooldowns, Mistweaver is probably the least popular healer. And I've heard a lot of the guilds for the next tier set, they're kind of sticking away or staying away from Mistweaver because they feel they're relatively underpowered in this Discipline Priest, Holy Paladin meta right now. But again, anything can happen in 8.3, anything can happen before the new raid. If you're not looking to play the highest end mythic content, mythic raiding content, Mistweaver is going to be a great choice for you. One of the most mobile healers in the game right now. You have like a teleport, you have your torpedo if you want, you have your roll. There's a lot of things that Mistweaver can do. You have your Ring of Peace, just insane utility, AoE stun, Way of the Crane in Mythic Plus when you're pulling 20 mobs at the same time and you're breaking 50, 100k HPS. Like, there is a whole lot of ways to optimize Mistweaver. But in Mythic end raiding, the very highest end content, you might fall down to the two healers that I mentioned and regrets with Rising Mist. I love to hear your opinion about Rising Mist. I love to hear your opinions about fistweaving, about what could have been. Are you enjoying your Mistweaver? Are you topping the meters? Are you really enjoying the utility that Mistweavers provide? The, you know, the 5% physical debuff that's mandatory for all the raiding guilds as well is kind of important. But I'd love to hear what you think about Mistweaver in BfA 8.25. I'd love to hear what changes, or maybe there shouldn't be any changes made. Let me know, guys. And I'm back with the retail videos. Let me know how you feel about that as well. Thank you. And if you enjoyed the content, please do subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And I'll see you in my next guide.